of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna.
But
And
can you just tell me I have a different version, the chapter?
it's The Master with the Brahmo Devotees, Part
Okay.
2.
Okay.
And we're just before Wednesday, May 2nd. We're on the page facing Wednesday, May 2nd, 1883.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So, and he's talking about the Vedanta, and that when you see the king, when you actually have that realization, there'll be no doubt in your mind at all that you have seen the divine, that you won't have to ask, am I realized? Have I seen God? And now he's going to be talking about the Godhead and about the gunas. So he says, when the Godhead is thought of as creating, preserving, and destroying, it is known as the personal God, Saguna Brahman, or the primal energy, Adya Shakti. All right. So if God has attributes, if he's doing something, that's the personal God. Now, in Don Hoffman, he would talk about that. That's Brahman with an augmented reality headset on, which I love that has time, space, and causation in it. So when God puts on a headset that has time, space, and causation in it, he's the personal God. He becomes the avatar and the creator God. And the avatar is the means of approaching the creator God, or the personal God. So when the Godhead is creating, preserving, and destroying, it's known as the personal God, Saguna Brahman, or primal energy, Adya Shakti. Again, when it is thought of as beyond the three gunas, then it is called the attributeless reality, Nirguna Brahman, beyond speech and thought. This is the supreme Brahman, Par Brahman. And that is the divine, completely unaffected by this world, by the creation. He is there's no real describing what he's doing, but he is what makes all of it possible. Just like space makes room for objects, silence makes room for sound, Brahman makes room for creation, for isness, for existence. And I like to see all of this. Usually when you read this kind of thing, we put it outside of ourselves and we make it really big. Brahman way out there, totally beyond anything. And the personal God is, he's definitely up there somewhere. And I talk to him and can't see him and all of that. But in the last couple of years, the perspective on that has changed quite radically for me, because I think that each one of us carries this within us. We literally carry the universe within us. And Brahman, Ramakrishna says that pure mind and Brahman are one and the same. So the unmanifest divine, Brahman, the Nirguna Brahman, is mind, empty mind, still mind with no thought. All right. And then Brahman, Saguna Brahman, or Brahman, the personal God, or the power of Shakti, is the mind with waves in it, the mind that has been touched with me and mine, and through that me and mine in the pure mind, it causes the disturbance, because me and mine is unreal, and so really Brahman has to change his entire nature, in a sense, when those fingers of me and mine mix the pool of the mind and begin to cause refractions and thoughts and projections of the universe within the pure mind. And so you've got both of these aspects living within you. You are that. So that means that within you is both that immortal, ever-free, unchanging absolute, and the personal God, the God of creation, preservation, and destruction. Both of those are within you. You carry them with you in your universe, the universe that you are experiencing right now as your very own. And so we are that image of God. So we have both of those aspects of God, the universal Nirguna and the active Saguna within ourselves. And when we are able to have pure mind by grace and through practice and effort and training and love, we can experience the divine within. We can enter the Garden of Eden, that paradise, at that point. All right. And so he says, under the spell of God's Maya, man forgets his true nature. So what is Maya? Maya is ego. Maya is egoism. And so under the spell of egoism, or the egoism is the result of the spell, where that universal self has identified with a particular. You as the universal divine have entangled yourself in a particular definition of yourself, a smaller self. Very much like you as a full person, when you go to sleep and have a dream, you go through that process again. You, Brahman, that unidentified self, which can be anything or can be nothing, depending on how you see it, identifies with a different particular. It forgets entirely about your nature in the waking state. It forgets about your life in the waking state, all of your relationships in the waking state, forgets about your history and your story of being in the waking state, and it forgets about the body and its gender and its age and all of that, and becomes something completely different in the dream, takes on a dream body that has its own history and its own likes and dislikes and its own story and its own body. And what I like, and I think I mentioned this at some point in the last week or two anyway, where what that means. What that means is that you are an expert of renunciation. We go around saying, oh, I can't possibly renounce. Every night you renounce everything that you own, everything that you are, everything that you've been, all the friends you have, all the property you have, everything, to become a completely new entity in your dream. So you see, that's how that when the Buddhists say we don't meditate in order to realize God, we meditate to know that we are realized. You see, we don't renounce in order to learn how to renounce. We renounce because we're masters of renunciation already. And we just have to let that be, because it's contrary to our idea of ourself, because we've attached to a body mind. We've attached to a particular. But you are a master renouncer by nature. You are a master discerner at nature, in your nature, because you watch yourself do it masterfully and completely every night. Going to sleep and falling into a dream is the highest of renunciation. You forget your very self and become a new one. So I love that encouragement, and I I love it when you can see evidence of things that seem utterly impossible to us. And yet, because it's our nature to be free, to be non-attached, that's who we are, we actually are experts at it. It's the ego that has convinced us that we can't renounce. And it's the ego that has convinced us that we can't discern and see. But in fact, you are excellent at renunciation and excellent at discerning, if you stop the lie of egoism. And so under the spell of this egoism, under the spell of this Maya, man forgets his true nature, that infinite, ever pure, ever blissful self. He forgets that he is heir to the infinite glories of the Father. You are not a beggar in this home. You are not a beggar of God. You are the heir of everything that the Beloved has prepared for you in your enlightenment, as it were. It's yours by your very nature, by what you are, the fact that you are that divinity. And so we can have that kind with the proper adjustments. we can know, and even Thakur Ramakrishna says, you can go to God in tamasic devotion and say, give me my inheritance now. I don't want to wait for it. You can demand these things of God. And the reason for that is because of sonship, daughtership, that you are of the Beloved. And this relationship already exists in its most beautiful format. You just have to let go in order to experience it, to enjoy it, and to see it that way. And it's through grace that we actually attain the reality. Grace is really just a statement of what already is. We think that grace is God forgiving us of all of this, that, and the other. And that is one perspective, and it's perfectly fine. But grace is really nothing more than being allowed to see ourselves as we are, right? Grace is really just permission to accept our nature, to allow ourselves to be free, to not hold on to all of our samskaras and all of our karmas and all of our faults and all of our stories that are tied up in that crystalline ego of delusion in our own mind. Under the spell of this God's Maya, man forgets his true nature, forgets that he is the heir to the infinite glories of his Father. This divine Maya, now see, that's interesting because divine, it's still divine. It's still born of the nature of God. And what is it? It's God simply becoming whatever play is on the menu for the moment. So this divine Maya, because it is God, and when we get to the roof, remember Thakur says you climb the stairs to get to the roof, but when you get to the roof, you know that it's made of the same stuff that the stairs are made of. So we see that unity, that oneness and everything. So this divine Maya is made up of 3 gunas, and all 3 are robbers. So all of them are thieves. And what have they taken? They've taken your immortal, infinite, ever-free nature from you. And this is where we find a profound amount of motivation for change, for transcendence. We have been robbed. When you're sitting there, thinking ill thoughts, or sitting there thinking lusty thoughts, or sitting there getting involved in anxiety and whatnot of the world, you are being robbed in real time. That lower nature, that ego, that divine Maya, has stolen from you your clarity and your knowledge of self, your freedom, your immortality. And so to recognize that, when your desires are pulling at you, so often we take the wrong attitude of like, oh, my desires, I wish I could just one time dig into my desires without having to be responsible for it. Can't we put karma on the shelf for a moment and just let me enjoy this or that? But the real way to approach it is to understand, oh my God, the thief is in my home. The thief is in my home. Let me guard my treasure. Let me guard my clarity of mind. Let me guard my inner peace. Let me guard my knowledge of my fulfillment and my contentedness. They are all 3 robbers, for they rob man of all of his treasures and make him forget his true nature. These 3 gunas are sattva, rajas, and tamas. Of these, sattva alone points to the way to God, but even sattva cannot take a man to God. So he's going to tell this story about the 3 robbers. But you see here that these 3 robbers are, you've got your rajas, which is that action. You can't sit still. You're a doer. That type A personality. Let's get this done. Let's make a plan and let's stick to it. Get up, go over here. Everybody do. Right? And you define yourself by accomplishments, by achievements, by promotions, by attainments. All of those things belong to the Rajasic person. So the Rajasic person likes to wear their fancy clothes to announce their wealth. They like their big cars, to have people look at their accomplishments, their position in society. They love their power. They make sure that they've got a pretty family and a pretty home and a pretty yard and all of those accoutrements of delusion right there. And this is rajas. This is that uncontrollable activity, that attachment to doing and accomplishing. And then there, of course, is tamas, which is the opposite. It's that not leaving your room, not getting away from your computer, not getting out of bed on time, taking a little bit more of a nap than what you really needed. It's just that sluggishness. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't have to do that. It's just that inertia, slowing, just laziness, dullness, non-thinking in the neglectful sense. And so this tamas, if it takes control, brings us down, drags us down, takes us away from our nature and from our knowledge. And then sattva. Sattva is not really a thing in and of itself. The way Swami Prabhupada used to describe sattva to me is that sattva is a harmony and a balance between rajas and tamas. When rajas and tamas are balanced and in their proper proportions, then sattva is ruling. And sattva is what lines the gears up in the master lock that opens the door to paradise. But it doesn't open the lock for you. It just aligns the tumblers so that it can be opened. You still have to open it and go through, or the divine grace has to open it and invite you through, depending on how you want to talk about that. So that's Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. Now he's going to describe it through this wonderful story, which I know we've all heard, about the three robbers. Let me tell you a story, Ramakrishna says. So gather around his feet here. Once actually, the image I instantly get, Swami Damodarananda, who was a great seer, Swami at Belur Math. In his room, he had a ground floor room in the old training center. And he was always in the middle of a huddle of brahmacharis. The young brahmacharis just loved him because he was so interested in everybody. He was so right there with you, and he had so much wisdom and just so much love. And every afternoon after the nap time was over, 10 or 15 brahmacharis would sneak over to the old training center and go to Swami Damodara's room, and we would all sit on the floor surrounding his bed, and he would sit there on the bed and he would just tell us stories about his life as a monk, as a monastic. And then when it came time for dinner, he'd get up and we would all huddled around him and make the group's way to the dining hall for dinner. And he just that wonderful company. I don't remember why I'm telling the story. It was just what came to mind. Let's see here. Anyway,
you said gather around the feet of Ramakrishna.
Oh, there we go. So it wasn't even a point. We'll get that. Anyway, just an opportunity for a beautiful story. Swami Damodarananda, he actually gave up his own body and left a note saying the body had served its purpose, and he gave it up just a few years ago at Belur Math. But this gathering around, the monks do that quite a bit at Belur Math. As a brahmachari, every night at 10 o'clock, there's a class where you sit around and the senior monks come and we'll read different scriptures and we'll talk about them and give points on them. And all the young brahmacharis.
What time?
10 o'clock.
Oh my God. Okay.
I know, because we had to get up at 3:30. But anyway, so we'd go and we'd all sit around and hear these wonderful stories. And then at 4 o'clock, when there's tea time, you have to know where to go because there's some very senior swamis who have tea together on the portico on the behind the office buildings, and they sit around. There's a outside table on the veranda there, and they'll sit there and have their cup of chai in the afternoon. And if you're a brahmachari in the know, you can go up there and have tea with these great swamis, the real stalwarts of the order. And the conversation is always fascinating, always wonderful. And so there's always these kinds of little gatherings going around, happening just spontaneously in different places. And the conversation, the opportunities for the monks that get to live at Belur Math, endless, just endless. Because if all of that's not enough, you've got Arogya Bhavan, that the retirement home, where you've got all these ancient swamis doing nothing but sitting in their rooms. And you can go over there freely, just go and knock on a door and go in, and they're just delighted to see you. And you've got these swamis, men who have been sadhus for 50, 60, some of them 70 years. And all of that knowledge and all of that experience and all of that practice is yours for the taking. Just going over there and spending time with these wonderful, wonderful sadhus. So, if you ever want to join the order, there's a good motivation for you. Or go find a brahmachari Ask a brahmachari to take you to the Arogya Bhavan to meet some of the swamis. See if you can make that happen. All right. So let me tell you a story. Gather round. Once a rich man was passing through a forest when 3 robbers surrounded him and robbed him of all of his wealth. You see, this is, it's not an accident that it says all of his wealth, because living an egoistic life like we do, we are living in poverty from a spiritual perspective. You know, our inner peace has been stolen. Our contentment has been stolen. Our knowledge of immortality has been stolen. Our ability to love equanimously has been stolen. Our freedom from samskara, our freedom from definition has been stolen. Our freedom from time, space, and causation has been stolen. So we are literally, from the spiritual perspective, we are in the ghetto of spiritual life. You know, we've really given up a lot, and we've given it up so thoroughly we've completely forgotten about it. Just like when we go into our dream at night, we forget all about who we are and what we are. We've gone into this dream, the dream of Maya, and we've forgotten utterly what we are. And not so much that we've forgotten it, we've chosen something different. We've chosen to manifest something else, something differently, through our confusion, through our identification with time, space, causation, and all the objects in it. After snatching all of his possessions from him, one of the robbers said, "What's the good of keeping the man alive?" Saying this, he was about to strike their victim with his sword, when the second robber interrupted and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, there's no use in killing him. Let's not do that. Let us bind him fast and leave him here. Then he won't be able to tell the police." Accordingly, the robbers tied him with a rope and left him and went away. After a while, the third robber returned to the rich man and said, "Ah, you're badly hurt, aren't you? Come, I'm going to release you." The third robber set the man free and led him out of the forest. When they came near the highway, the robber said, "Follow this road and you will reach home easily." "But you must come with me too," said the man. "You have done so much for me. We shall all be happy to see you at your home." "No, no," said the robber. "It is not possible for me to go there. The police will arrest me." So saying, he left the rich man after pointing out the way. Now the first robber, who said, "What's the good of keeping the man alive? Kill him," is tamas, right? So that part of you that's like, "Oh, what's the use?" Or that part of you that gets, world weary, gets tired of living, loses its purpose, loses its sense of accomplishment, and just gets stuck. That's the person under the sway of tamas, and the way out of tamas is rajas, right? So it destroys. Tamas destroys. The second robber is rajas, which binds a man to the world and entangles him in a variety of activities. Activities are caused by desire. And so it's your sense of lack that produces desire and gives you your activities in the world. So rajas is someone bent on desire, who feels a constant sense of lack within, and is going out into the augmented reality, going out into the dream to try and fulfill or fix that problem. So rajas makes him forget God. Sattva alone shows the way to God. All right. So if you're in tamas, you need rajas, according to Vivekananda. Rajas is what brings you out of tamas. So that means the way that I think about that, the way I've used that in the past, is when you're feeling depressed or feeling like you can't move or accomplish something, get up and do service of any kind, whatever, anything. Get out a pen and paper and write an encouraging note to somebody. Get on the phone immediately and call one of your friends from the center and read a scripture to them and just say you're thinking of them. Or go make a sandwich and walk down to the park and find someone who needs it and give it to them. So this is how we battle tamas, this inertia, this inability to move or to change. And sometimes this tamas can get quite severe, to where you really are immobilized. You You can't do anything. Even the things that you thought you wanted to do just seem impossible to you. And again, rajas is the way through it. But you take it, you do little tiny things, So like if you were supposed to write a whole thesis that night, and you just can't get yourself to do it, don't sit there and go through the gyrations of battling. Oh, I can't. I don't want to do. I can't. That's what happens. Instead, just do one small thing. Go get out your notepad and your pen and set it on the desk. And congratulate yourself to the moon for that. It sounds ridiculous, but by doing that, you break the flight or freeze response that's inside, that's causing you this avoidance, because this stress that you're feeling, that you've created from not doing what you need to do, that stress is being translated in the mind as a fight or flight situation. And you're locked into a freeze, like a deer in headlights. You can't move. You don't know what to do. And so what you do is you do something very small, and then you congratulate yourself. Now, the doing something small is the rajas that's pulling you just a bit out of your tamas. The congratulating yourself, scientifically what it does is it produces that, whatever that chemical is in your brain. What is it when you do exercise and you get a shot of something? Dopamine. There it is. You get it causes some dopamine, that celebration. And when you are celebrating an accomplishment, the mind says, oh, wait a minute, this isn't a fight or flight situation. And it lifts that freeze. It allows you to get past that frozen aspect. So this is how we use this information here to become human beings. So sattva alone is the way to God. Sattva is that harmony, that balance. So sattva, rajas and tamas are in their proportions and balanced and are being used appropriately, and they are not controlling you, you're controlling them. And that is a state of sattva, a state of harmony. It produces virtues like compassion, righteousness, and devotion. Again, sattva is like the last step of the stairs. Next to it is the roof. The supreme Brahman is man's own abode. All right? What does that mean? That means that's what we've been talking about all along. This is the beautiful part. This is the most beautiful part of all of religion. That within you is that the supreme Brahman is your own abode within the heart. We call it the heart, the cave of the heart, the shrine of the heart, however you want to look at it. That place where the absolute unchanging is. Now, as soon as you go there, you realize it's not a place. But nonetheless, from where we're standing, it's in the heart, this place where you stand to watch the mind and to watch the body without being entangled in either of them. This is your true abode. This is where you should spend your life, right? And the way that we see the difference of those two states, what are we talking about? Staying in the cave of the heart, staying there. What does that mean? It's that walking down the street. There's two ways to walk down the street. Walk down the street established in mind. If you're a man or a woman established in mind, then you're interested in everything. You're looking at the store windows. You're looking at how people are dressed. You're seeing beautiful people and ugly people, men and women, all of the different varieties and arrays. And you can tell if you've been in that state because when you get home, you're exhausted. Right? So it's like when you go to the fair, you don't do anything at the fair except wander around the whole day, but you're constantly so distracted. At the end of the day, you go home and you're just, I'm beat, because you've lived in your mind. You've lived in the world and the changing, and you're completely out of balance, and you're stuck in rajas. And so you can't see. The other way to do it is to walk around and you stay in charge and become aware of everything that is being watched, but don't own it. I'm not watching anything. I'm not absorbed in anything. I'm walking in the fair at the moment, and the beloved is here everywhere. And you notice the beloved, you notice beautiful things, you notice positive things, but you don't get caught in them. You're just slowly watching. Do anybody seen that movie Koyaanisqatsi? I think that's how it's pronounced. It's an art film, and there's no dialogue in the whole film. It's just a whole series of images that give a very powerful message. And one of those images that really stuck in my mind is that they're in Hong Kong on the streets, which is a huge bustle of millions of people going everywhere. And in the middle of it is this monk who's in his robes with his hands together, and he's walking down the sidewalk very slowly, putting toe to heel, toe to heel, toe to heel, toe to heel, moving at a slow pace. And at first they're right there, zoomed in on his face. You just see him doing his mantra, and he's not paying attention, not caught up in any of the bustle of the world. He is residing in the temple of the heart, and you feel and can see that peace and radiance of stillness in him. And then they begin zooming the camera out little by little, and they get all the way up to like skyscraper height, and you still see him by nature of how he's completely other than all of the bustle going on around him. He's the only character moving very purposefully and very slowly, and maintaining his own atmosphere, his own abode. And that is what we're talking about when he says here that this Brahman is your abode, is your eternal abode. He says, where is it here? That the supreme Brahman is one's own abode. That's how it is. That's what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to dwell there. It's our own abode. We should dwell in our own abode, not in the stranger's land, the land of change, the land of other, the land of difference. So the supreme Brahman is man's own abode. One cannot attain the knowledge of Brahman unless one transcends the three gunas. And transcends means what? Pull yourself out of them, pull yourself above them to where you can observe them and their nature, right? So you can see that these are the strings of the puppet of the ego, the sattva, rajas, and tamas. The preacher, you've given us a fine talk, sir, master with a smile. Do you know the nature of devotees? When one devotee meets another, he says, let me speak and you listen. And when you speak, I will listen. You are the preacher and teach so many people. You are a steamship, and I am a mere fishing boat. So he's, as if Ramakrishna was just a mere fishing boat and that some preacher was some steamer. But you see that humility in him. He was very cautious about taking on any credit, taking on any positive aspects of egoism or action of rajas, so that he wouldn't get caught in the story. He wouldn't start living to be a good person, or living to be a good speaker, or living to be a good teacher. That's how we get caught into those things, right? The best way to see that is on these cursed social media pages. They're designed to pull you in. They're designed to make you watch numbers and to worry about your content and worry about how many people are watching and for how long they're watching. I say curse because there's no way to go in and create content without being exposed to your dashboard, which puts all of those numbers and graphs right in front of you immediately. And the ego loves that stuff. Loves that stuff. And if we start living for things like that, that's just a symbol of a divorce that's happened within, when you've divorced your unchanging real nature and have started flirting with this world of constant change and identifying with things that are under a constant set of change, defining yourself by gender, defining yourself by body, defining yourself by education, all of these changing things that are meaningless. None of them stays the same. So for you to claim that, oh, I'm this, well, how long have you been that? You haven't always been that. So it's not what you are. You can say, oh, I'm a man. Well, what were you when you were 5? You weren't a man. You were a child. And yet you've become a man and you've accepted that change, and you're still defining yourself by a body that is no longer the same in any way to the body that you were when you were 5. And so don't put yourself in the stressful, untenable situation of defining your state of being by the constant flux and change of the world and senses, because you can't find stability there. You can't find stability there. So stop it. All right, what are we doing here? All right, Wednesday, May 2nd, 1883, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna arrived at the temple of the Brahmo Samaj in Nadangbagan, accompanied by M. Rakal and a few other devotees. At first, the master sat in the drawing room on the ground floor where the Brahmo devotees gradually assembled. Rabindranath Tagore and a few other members of the Tagore family were present on this occasion. Wow, what a wonder. Rabindranath had some beautiful poetry. I wonder what it would be wonderful to be in his presence, I would think, to see the heart behind all of that poetry. Must have been amazing. Yeah, it really must have been something beautiful. Sri Ramakrishna was asked to go to the worship hall on the second floor. A dais had been built in the eastern side of the room. There were a few chairs and a piano in the hall. The Brahmo worship was to begin at dusk. As soon as the master entered the worship hall, he bowed low before the dais. Having taken his seat, he said to M and the other devotees, Narendra at once asked me, what good is there in bowing before the Brahmo Samaj temple? The sight of the temple recalls to my mind God alone. Then God consciousness is kindled in my mind. God is present where people talk about him. One feels there is the presence of all the holy places. Places of worship recall God alone to my mind. So what did Thakur just do for us? He gave us our proper perspective of all of the world's religions and practices and traditions. He's given us the way to see them and appreciate them, so that we can go into a Catholic church and be drawn to meditation, drawn to contemplation, drawn to the silence before the divine. We can go into a mosque and we can be drawn into the same atmosphere, the same worshiping of the same one without a second. And so this is how that's done. This is how we appreciate all of the world's religions. We look at somebody who thinks completely different from us, and we look at their devotion and their relationship with their idea, their highest ideal, and we forget ours for a moment, just enough to be drawn into the devotion of their practice and of their world, and understanding that their heart is behind that in the same way that your heart is behind yours. And it's through that kind of practice that we find respect for each other, and through that respect for each other, the conversation happens. And through that conversation, we find peace and we grow. We nurture each other instead of fight each other. So to see that and appreciate your own relationship with God through all of the other possibilities. We see Thakur doing that. He became a Christian for a while, practiced Islam for a while, practiced the different types of Hinduism for a while, until he brought each one of them to realization. And that's how he was able to verify what the scriptures said thousands of years ago, that truth is one, though the sages call it by many names. And that's why he was a big exponent of religion as one, that all religions lead to the same goal, all the traditions of the world. Once a devotee was overwhelmed with ecstasy at the sight of the babla tree. The idea flashed in his mind that the handle of the axe used in the garden of the temple of Radhakanta was made from the wood of the babla tree. Another devotee had such devotion for his guru that he would be overwhelmed with divine feeling at the sight of his guru's neighbors. Krishna consciousness would be kindled in Radha's mind at the sight of a cloud, a blue dress, or a painting of Krishna. She would become restless and cry like a mad person, Krishna, where are you? Right? So what's he sharing there? It's, this whole idea of the mind takes the color uh, uh, of what you dip it in, right? Oh goodness, mother's teaching me again. So your mind takes the color of what you dip it in. So if you live in this world and you dip your mind in pleasure, you dip your mind in food, you dip your mind in clothing, you dip your mind in sexuality, you dip your mind in this, that, or the other, then you begin to associate other things in the world with that thing. And your whole world becomes about those things, right? And you get lost in them. But if you keep your mind on your freedom, keep the mind on your real nature, on your inner beauty, the inner wonder of your existence with him, you keep your mind there, and then the whole world sings to that. The whole world comes in to support that. And you have these experiences where these little things remind you of these spiritual stories, these spiritual experiences, these spiritual scriptures, these spiritual ideals that are part and parcel of being an image of the divine, of God. And so keep your mind pure, dip it in the proper things. And if you're not, then just start. That's all. If you find yourself dipping your mind in the wrong bucket, just stop and change buckets. That's all. Don't get upset about it. Don't take it on as an identity. Don't think that you're bad or good or indifferent. Just let it be and do the right thing. That's all of spiritual life, actually. All of spiritual life is always just this moment. If in this moment you are doing something you shouldn't be doing, stop. If in this moment you aren't doing something that you should be doing, then do it. That's all of religion. That's all there is to it. Doesn't have to be any more than that. So don't make your faults and foibles and whatnots a big, huge thing. Your renunciation isn't about the rest of your life. Your renunciation is about your moment right now, what's in front of you. Renounce and be free. Your discernment isn't a thing that you have to do all the time for the rest of your life. Your discernment's about the moment. Discern what is changing, what is not changing, where is the unchanging, and go there. That's all there is. You can forget everything else, all the other stuff. If you do that, that was the practice of Brother Lawrence. That's where I got that from. Brother Lawrence did that practice for 14 years and had his realization. Lived in such a state of joy, he had to hide his expression of it so that it wouldn't cause problems, wouldn't cause so much attention toward him. And it was just that. In this moment, be with God, choose God. That's all. Not for the rest of your life, not for forever, just for this moment. And that's how you stop the ego from getting triggered. Oh, I can't give up cake for the rest of my life. What would I do without cake? Well, don't give up cake for the rest of your life. Give up cake for this moment and stay there. That's all. And it happens like that. It's very simple, very small, very straightforward. Don't let it become too big for you. So Ghoshal here says, well, madness is not what we want. Madness is not desirable. And the master, what do you mean? Was Radha's madness the madness that comes from brooding over worldly objects and makes one unconscious? There's a lot in there right there, actually, that one sentence. Brooding over worldly objects is what makes you unconscious, makes you ignorant, right? You ignore the divine nature within in order to enjoy the world of change. You take yourself out of the establishment of the silence, and you move into all the colors and flashing and promises and lies of the changing world. So if you brood on worldly objects, if you sit there and think about where you're going on vacation, or how nice it would be to have that new Bang & Olufsen stereo, or gosh, if we could just move down the street into that bigger house. If you bathe your mind in worldly objects, you will forget your nature. You'll forget the beauty of existence. You'll forget the profundity of your being that's independent of what you're doing. You see? So was Radha's madness the madness that comes from brooding over worldly objects that makes one unconscious? One attains that madness by meditating on God. Haven't you heard of love madness and knowledge madness? Brahmo devotee, how can I realize God? How can I do this? Master, by directing your love to God and constantly reasoning that God alone is real and that this world is illusory, constantly changing, always misrepresenting itself. I think the most powerful example of this that I saw was one day I was sitting over, there's a park that overlooks Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. And I was sitting there just enjoying the view and then just kind of started thinking about what I was looking at. And it was so odd because I was looking at the Ghirardelli chocolate factory, which wasn't. I was looking at a Fisherman's Wharf, which isn't. I was looking at Alcatraz prison, which isn't. I was looking at this clipper ship moored there as a museum. It's not a clipper ship anymore. It's cemented to the bottom of the ocean, bottom of the bay right there. You know, so it's like, how funny it is. This is what Maya is. Nothing is what it seems to be. Everything is putting on a pretense of being something different. You know, it's all potting soil putting on a dress. That's what Maya is. Buckets of potting soil dressed up in fancy clothes. By directing your love to him and constantly reasoning that God alone is real and the world illusory. So this is how you stay in the shrine when you're walking down a busy street. This discernment is running through your mind. You are looking and consciously knowing everything that is changing is unreal. That which is not changing alone is real. And it helps you put your attention on attention, your reality, your isness, the I am, which is God. The aswata tree alone is permanent. Its fruit is transitory. Brahmo, we have passions like anger and lust. What shall we do with these? Master, direct the 6 passions to God. Make God a part of everything. 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 You know, even your vices. Bring God into your vices, because God will give you the clarity to see that they are not you. They are not what you want. They do not ever give you what you are seeking. They always leave you burned up and alone. So direct your 6 passions to God. The impulse of lust should be turned into the desire to have intercourse with the Atman, that union with the divine, right? And you can literally do this. It's a rather unique practice, you know, but you can imagine, you know, this intimacy with God, with the divine. It's part of a practice. It's one of the, what did Thakur call it? It's one of the kitchen door practices, but it's a practice. If you must have the feeling that of I and mine, then associate it with God. Say, for instance, my Rama, my Krishna. If you must have pride, then feel like Bibhishana, who said, I have touched the feet of Rama with my head. I will not bow this head before anyone else. That instantly reminds me of that story of the old rancher family that lives by Shanti Ashrama. The grandmother, she's not alive anymore, unfortunately, but when she was over 100 years old, she would still ride horses out to round up the cows as a rancher at 100. And one day, Swami Vedananda and we'd gone up there to work for the week, like we did every year. And we always would go to their ranch, the Stoddards, that was their name. We went to the Stoddards ranch and we would fill up we had 15 5-gallon jugs that we would fill up with water because there was no water out there at the retreat. And one time Mrs. Stoddard was there, the grandmother, the matriarch of the family. And she got off the horse while we were filling the buckets. And, you know, of course, Swami Vedananda took the chance to thank her for always letting us fill our water there and how kind, what good neighbors they've been all these years. And then he said to her, he said, you know, we're going to be having a big pilgrimage day this Saturday. Why don't you come to the retreat, to Shanti Ashrama? And she said, to Swami Vedananda was great. She said, "My boy, when I was a little girl, I sat on the lap of Swami Turiyananda. What makes you think that I need to see another Swami?" And she went on her way. And I was like, wow, that was fabulous. That was perfect. And that's where we're going to pause for this evening.
That's an